कि आपका
Hello and welcome. I'm Asuma Katauka and you are watching NewsX. Well, let's take a look at some of the top stories. At least 30 Palestinians, including women and children, have reportedly been killed in strikes on Nusayrat. According to the Gaza Civil Defense Agency, it comes amid reports of 8 trucks from Egypt being looted amid a continued concern over famine. Meanwhile, a diplomatic source has said that France will also join UAE and Jordan in dropping aid into the Gaza Strip. As starving looms in the Strip, the UN Food Agency has also warned that Gaza's humanitarian crisis resembles the devastating 20th century famines in Ethiopia and Biafra, which together claimed over 2 million lives. The Kremlin said it wants to pursue peace in Ukraine just hours after deadly strikes across several regions that killed at least 25 people, including a pregnant woman and 16 prison inmates, while Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky accused Russia of deliberately targeting a prison in the Zaporizhzhia region, wounding more than 40 others. An uneasy ceasefire between Cambodia and Thailand is mostly holding after peace talks in Malaysia, despite Thai allegations of post-truce skirmishes and the capture of 18 Cambodian troops. Both sides met for de-escalation talks today, as Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim confirmed a minor skirmish has been resolved now. More than 1,300 firefighters and a dozen waterbombing plants are battling 3 major wildfires in Portugal amid scorching summer heat, with most of the country on red alert. In Arouca, authorities have evacuated dozens of residents as the largest fire continues to burn since Monday. Indian Home Minister Amit Shah says that 3 of the terrorists that carried out the tragic April 22nd Pahalgam attack have been killed by Kashmiri forces. The announcement comes as India's lower house has been discussing Operation Sindoor at length in Parliament. A police officer is among the casualties after shooting inside a Manhattan skyscraper before the gunman turns the gun on himself. NYPD have identified the suspect as 27-year-old Shane Tamura of Las Vegas, with 4 others killed. Boeing has reported a reduced second quarter loss of $697 million compared to a $1.4 billion a year ago. As plane deliveries have increased, CEO Kelly Ortberg has said that operations are showing signs of stabilization following recent safety issues. A tragic incident unfolded in Manhattan earlier today. A gunman opened fire near a corporate office building on Park Avenue. At least 4 people have been killed in this shooting incident. The suspect or the gunman was neutralized in the incident. While commenting on the shooting, U.S. President Donald Trump has posted on his Truth Social. His post mentions that he has been briefed about the situation and that the shooting was a senseless act of violence. The investigation into the shooting is now underway. There are some big revelations that's come to light. The shooter reportedly arrived in a BMW car, which was registered under his name. After the attack, the police also found a rifle case with rounds, a loaded revolver, ammunition, and magazines in the suspect's car. Investigators revealed that the attacker was carrying a note at the scene, voicing anger that his mental illness may be linked to his having played football. The mayor has even revealed that New York gunman thought he had brain injury condition CTE. While speaking on this, here's what the New York Mayor Eric Adams had to say.
The NFL headquarters is located in the building at 345 Park Avenue. From our preliminary investigation, he took the wrong elevator bank up to the NFL headquarters. Instead, it took him to Rudin Management, and that is where he carried out additional shootings and took the lives of additional employees. We're going to look at the perpetrator's social media pages. We're going to go to his home with our partners in the federal and state law enforcement partners in Las Vegas. We're going to look at the note and determine if it's his handwriting. And so there's a thorough investigation that is going to really start putting the pieces together to go over his path on how he took the lives of innocent people. A total of 6 people were shot. One, of course, is the suspect.
Now for this discussion, we are joined by John Rosamando. He's a president of Viking Research Associates and geopolitical analyst. Thank you, John, for joining us today. Good to see you. Thank you. So now, like, this tragedy has been in the light for today, and the fact that the gunman arrived in a car registered under his name, as well as he had multiple weapons. Don't you think there could be multiple opportunities for law enforcement or to track or prevent him from arriving and causing such a tragic incident?
Well, there's nothing that law enforcement could have done to prevent this incident. You had a guy from Las Vegas who had a legally purchased weapon. He had a permit. And one of the problems, the gun control advocates say, you have background checks. It doesn't catch people who don't have criminal records. You had this gentleman, go on a rampage in Manhattan with an AR-15, which is, commonly owned here in the U.S. It's a tragedy, and there's really nothing that could be done. I think one of the things the media in America needs to do is stop covering these spree shootings like they do, because it creates copycats.
Then how do you think the media should cover such cases, and what can media in U.S. is doing different from the media here?
It sensationalizes, the use of AR-15s in these mass shootings. You have unstable people seeing it in the media. They should just simply be, brief blurbs in local news. They shouldn't be, broadcast across America, because, social science shows that you have something called, copycats.
Yes, and now, what can New York City and other metropolitan areas do to better prevent such gun violence, especially in crowded, high-profile areas like New York?
Well, it's kind of hard to, protect soft areas. I mean, because you never know who's coming in and who's coming out. Places like New York, Washington, Chicago have some of the tightest gun control legislation around. AR-15s are hard to come by in neighboring New Jersey and New York because of tight gun control laws. Yet, this gentleman went across state lines and brought a weapon that he purchased in Nevada, which is like 2,000 miles away. I mean, that's, for your viewers in India, that's like going between, say, Calcutta and Pakistan. I mean, they would have had to driven that distance. So it's really difficult to prevent.
Thank you, John, for sharing that. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion as well. Now we move on to our next news. German Chancellor Merz said today that his government will not currently recognize a Palestinian state, calling it not the right step at this time. Speaking in Berlin alongside Jordan's King Abdullah, Merz instead pressed Israel to urgently improve Gaza's humanitarian crisis. Let's listen in to his full statement.
Die Anerkennung eines palästinensischen Staates betrachten wir gegenwärtig aber nicht als den richtigen Schritt. Es kann einer der letzten Schritte auf dem Weg zur Verwirklichung einer Zwei-Staaten-Lösung sein. Die Bundesregierung plant insofern nicht, kurzfristig einen palästinensischen Staat anzuerkennen. Für uns steht im Vordergrund überfällige erste Schritte zu den dringendsten Fragen zu erreichen.
He announced that 2 German military aircraft could begin airdropping aid from Jordan to Gaza as soon as Wednesday. This is a small but important signal, Merz said, while warning against any further expulsions or annexations in the West Bank. Meanwhile, Merz also said that Germany, France, and the UK are considering a joint foreign minister visit to Israel next Thursday to press Tel Aviv directly for more aid access. Here's what he had to say.
Wir werden wahrscheinlich am Donnerstag der nächsten Woche die 3 Außenminister bitten, aus Frankreich, Großbritannien und Deutschland gemeinsam nach Israel zu reisen und die Position der 3 Staaten, der 3 Regierungen vorzutragen. Und wir behalten uns selbstverständlich weitere Beratungen und auch weitere Beschlussfassungen dazu vor. Wir gehen aber davon aus, dass die israelische Regierung durchaus bereit ist anzuerkennen, dass jetzt etwas geschehen.
Israel, which launched a daily pause in fighting this week, has allowed hundreds of trucks into Gaza, but aid agencies say it is not enough. King Abdullah echoed that view, calling airdrops a drop in the ocean and urging for more land-based aid. Germany, a close ally of Israel, has recently increased its criticism of the offensive that followed Hamas's October 7th attack, 2023 attack. Now we go back to our guest discussion with John Rosomondo. He's the president of Viking Research Associates and geopolitical analyst. Thank you, John, for staying with us.
Thank you.
Now, Chancellor Merz's refusal to recognize a Palestinian state, it's different from France's push to recognize a Palestinian state. So how can this stir a diverse reaction from other countries in Europe, and how should governments navigate these sensitive issues in public statements?
Well, all I have to say is that France has a large Muslim population that has been agitating Paris to recognize a Palestinian state. The large Muslim populations across Europe are agitating for this, but we saw in 2005 what happens if you leave territory to the Palestinians. I mean, Hamas overthrew the Palestinian Authority in 2006 and decided to turn Gaza into a terrorist emirate that led all the way to where we're at now with this intractable problem of the siege in Gaza and so forth.
And John, now public perception and crisis, looking at crisis management, Chancellor Merz is calling for Israel to address the humanitarian crisis instead of focusing or recognizing Palestinian as a separate state. How do you think this approach will affect Germany's image in the international community?
Well, I don't think that it will have much of an impact on Germany's reputation. I think that there's a lot of fog of war going on in terms of who's not allowing aid to reach the people in Gaza. The Israelis blame the UN and aid agencies for not bringing aid in. The Israelis point out that the UN relies on Hamas supported blue police in Gaza, and that the Israelis say that the Hamas is looting the aid. So I think that there's a lot of very confused narratives going on right now.
Yes, thank you so much, John Rosomondo, for joining us and sharing your insight all the way from Washington, D.C. Now we move on to our next news. France and Saudi Arabia are leading a 2-day United Nations conference in New York to revive support for a 2-state solution between Israel and the Palestinians. Held from July 28th to 30th, the high-level meeting aims to refocus global attention on establishing peaceful, independent states for both peoples. Israel and the United States are boycotting this conference, calling it counterproductive. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres warned that this 2-state prospect is now further than ever, blaming the ongoing devastation in Gaza and Israel's plans to annex the West Bank. The talks come amid fresh momentum for Palestinian recognition. Now we are joined by Raymond Vickery. He's a former U.S. Assistant Secretary of Commerce, joins us live from Washington, D.C. Thank you, Raymond, for joining us today. Good to see you. Now, France and Saudi Arabia are taking a lead in pushing this solution for Palestine and Israel conflict area. And how do you assess the role of non-U.S. actors in shaping this future of Israeli-Palestinian peace process? Do you think that there can be any resolution or breakthrough knowing that U.S. and Israel are both not present in this talk?
Well, thanks very much for having me. It seems to me that this latest development between France and Saudi Arabia indicates that Israel is losing its moral authority, not by defending itself, but by the way in which it's conducting the war, and indeed using food and the lack thereof as a weapon in war. The United States has backed Israel very, very strongly. Indeed, without the kind of military equipment that we are providing, Israel would be very much handicapped in any of its foreign policy adventures. It seems to me that the Saudi Arabian French meeting without the United States is indicative that Israel and the United States are becoming more isolated in regard to the Gaza and the Palestinian problem. Indeed, there are many countries around the world who already recognize the PLO, including India and other very important countries. So this phenomenon is an arbiter of what will happen, in my opinion, if the U.S. and Israel continue their lockstep down the road to really a cleansing of the Palestinians from Israel to make a one-state solution. That's not a solution in the long run, and it seems to me that it behooves the United States to look further at what it's doing in support of Israel and to see if it can be more effective, at least in resolving a huge humanitarian crisis which exists in Gaza right now.
Yes, and Raymond, now from your perspective, what is your analysis that why is U.S. or current administration decided to pull themselves out of these talks?
Well, I think they never were in that talk. They've consistently backed Israel, but you heard President Trump's remarks just yesterday in regard to the humanitarian situation, which for the first time, it seems to me, there is an explicit recognition that there is starvation going on, that children, other innocents are dying just to try to get to food, which is only 30, 40 yards away. So there is some softening here of the U.S. position. But make no mistake about it, the lobby in the United States for Israel through AIPAC and other organizations is extremely strong. And President Trump has based a great deal of his present policy against those who might support the Palestinians on a continued lockstep with Israel. So this is a continuation. This is not a break. What the break is that Saudi Arabia and France are getting together on this two-state solution, and that other nations may join them in that effort.
Thank you very much, Raymond Vickery, for joining us and sharing your insight. Please stay with us as we come back to you. Now we move on to our next news. Iran's Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei is accusing the West of using nuclear demands as a cover to target the Islamic Republic. Speaking in Tehran, he said nuclear program enrichment, human rights are all excuses. He claims the West's real issue is Islamic beliefs and scientific progress. This comes a day after U.S. President Donald Trump threatened fresh strikes if Iran restarts its nuclear work. Iran denies seeking nuclear weapons, but has stockpiled highly enriched uranium. Khamenei's comments follow a deadly war with Israel that has targeted key Iranian nuclear sites earlier. The tensions are now back in the global spotlight. Let's have a look at what Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei had to say.
به عنوان هسته‌ای و غنیسازی و امثال اینها حقوق بشر و این چیزها میگن بهانه است. اصل قضیه اونه و ملت ایران به توفیق الهی دین خود را و دانش خود را رها نخواهد کرد. جمهوری اسلامی و ملت عزیز ایران.
Now we're joined by Peter Cardillo. He's a chief market economist at Spartan Capital Securities, joins us live from New York. Now, Peter, thank you for joining us today. Good to see you. Now, how should Iran's government manage such high-stakes rhetoric to maintain credibility on international stage while accusing the West or U.S. of attacking its nuclear enrichment ambitions and Islamic beliefs?
Well, I think, the present situation, now that Trump is back in power, the Iranians know that he means business, and so they're looking to blame whomever they may and suggest that perhaps they're going to engage in some sort of political military advance, and that is just rhetoric on their part, obviously. And so, if that were to happen, obviously that would be quite negative in terms of oil prices. You could see oil prices shoot up well above 150, perhaps $200 a barrel. I don't think it's going to get to that, but Iran seems to have a good sense of rhetoric and pointing to the finger to everyone. And of course, they do it, I want to say, in a sort of quasi-diplomatic way without aggravating the other nations that are involved or that they are accusing of dragging Iran into some sort of a conflict. So I think, most of the rhetoric that comes out of Iran needs to be ignored. And I think the markets are doing that. If you see the recent trend in oil prices, they've been rather calm. And some of the headlines have not been as calm as the oil market has been as calm. So I think it's just a lot of rhetoric. I don't think it will get to an explosive move. But then again, Iran could be playing with fire here because Trump certainly wouldn't hesitate to impose stronger sanctions against them, and they would be in dire straits when it comes to their economic policies.
And Peter, now looking at a broader picture, in earlier when Israel was attacking Iran and the fighting was ongoing, Russia kind of suggested to intervene or give solutions there. So do you think that Russia will do that again here to give some kind of, how do you say it, like how Turkey, yeah.
But when the conflict began, remember that President Trump was not president. Since President Trump has taken office, things have turned somewhat murky with Putin. That is, the relationship between Putin and Trump. And so I think here too, Trump is not going to aggravate the situation. Look, he's involved with the war with Ukraine. He certainly can't afford to open up any cans of worms, so to say, to get himself more deeper than he is. And he certainly, I think, he doesn't want to aggravate Trump in terms of the Israeli-Gaza situation. So, and of course, Iran as well. Of course, Iran will run to the Russians, and the Russians will comfort them. But by the same time, I don't think he goes much beyond the levels that he has, so that he doesn't, let's say, push this into a conflict that he would have a problem with.
Yes. Thank you so much, Peter Cordillo, for joining us and sharing your insight as a chief market economist. Now we move on to our next news. Poland has charged a Colombian citizen with terror offenses over his alleged role in 2 arson attacks carried out on behalf of Russia. The suspect has partially admitted his guilt and could face up to lifetime imprisonment. Poland's Internal Security Agency says that the 27-year-old man who was last month convicted of arson in the Czech Republic was responsible for 2 fires that occurred in warehouses in central Poland last year. Reports also suggested that the incidents were part of a large-scale operation by Russia that recruited people of Latin American origin with military experience to commit arson and record the acts for use in Russian disinformation campaigns. Last year, Poland and other countries in the region suffered a series of acts of sabotage, among them a fire that destroyed Warsaw's largest shopping center. The authorities have blamed Russia, whose intelligence services recruited and hired people living in those countries, often Ukrainian and Belarusian immigrants, to carry out these attacks. Now we go back to our guest discussion with Raymond Vickery. He's a former U.S. Assistant Secretary of Commerce. Thank you, Raymond, for staying with us. Now, what's your reaction towards this news that has just coming? Have you heard anything like this before?
Well, thanks again for having me. It seems to me that the significance of this latest development in regard to Poland is that the Russian violation of the principles of the UN Charter against non-aggression, which occurred in 2022, are broader than just what happens with Ukraine. Unfortunately, Putin has the old-time mentality from the 19th century of imperial greatness, and that greatness is measured by being able to control territory and control people. Russia historically, from time to time, has had great influence in Poland and throughout Eastern Europe. And this latest development showing that agents were actually recruited from Latin America to be able to cause harm and chaos in regard to Poland is unfortunately a part of this imperialistic mindset, which is Putin's, that somehow there is a Russian right to be able to control not only Ukraine, but other areas of Eastern Europe. So this is a very alarming development. It is not of the magnitude at this time which would invoke the NATO Charter, that an attack on one is an attack on all and cause war. But if indeed Russia should persist in its ambitions in regard to Poland, in regard to the Baltic states, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, then you run into the danger of widening the war, and indeed nobody knows where such a war would end. So this is an alarming development, but it is of a piece with the Putin mindset which he has exhibited for his entire tenure.
Yes, indeed, and thank you very much for sharing that, Raymond Vickery. He is former U.S. Assistant Secretary of Commerce, joined us live from Washington. Thank you very much for staying with us throughout our news. Well, that's all we have time for. We will continue to bring more news updates from around the world.